Hello, I hope you're ready to go on a search for an old Pontiac. This is what I found in my email inbox, and it reminded me of what happened to me 4 months ago when I saw this in my email box. Check that video out from my archives. This is what I found that time when I was looking for the 69 GTO Judge knot. So hopefully this time around things will go better. So here I am looking at my email inbox, seeing a 1969 Pontiac Custom S for $500 in Willis, Texas. Not too far from me, about an hour's drive, so hey, that's a great price on a cool car. So let's go check it out and see what it is. So, turned out to be a pretty complete and in fairly good shape overall. The motor and transmission were taken out of it to be rebuilt. Of course, that project never made it to completion, so those are just loose to be carried off with the car. Inside and outside, of course, is really dusty, but in really good condition overall. So, loaded it up on the tow dolly and brought it home to get a closer look at what I had bought. Luckily, I was able to get there as soon as I did because there were several other people lined up to buy this car. So I did luck out on this one. Turned out to be a really solid car. The only real damage was on this passenger side door. Can't really see it from the pictures, but there was some damage there that was patched up and fixed. The crazy thing is, I had bought a Custom S a few months before this, and if I hadn't, this would have been my project car to go forward with. But since I already had one, I basically got this car to use for some basic parts, which wasn't much really. Looking at all of the different parts of this car, it was all numbers matching, the engine and transmission. Had a 350 and actually had a turbo 400 transmission, which I kept. Looking over the car, it was in really solid shape overall. There were a few rust places, but nothing too major. Everything looked straight, hadn't been in an accident. The car came from California, was driven to Texas, and then of course I think it spent many years in the garage after that. So it is in really good shape. As I look around the car and check out all of the different areas of it, you can see it's a pretty solid old rig. Looking into the interior, the door panels were still in good shape, and of course armrest pad needs to be replaced. It's a dark green interior, which is pretty common for 69 model cars of all types. The dash was pretty solid. It was a column shift car. Did have AC, did have power disc brakes. Even had a really high-tech Sony radio in it. Mileage-wise, I only had 71,000 miles on it, so I hadn't been driven a whole heck of a lot before it was retired. So overall, it's looking pretty good so far for my $500. Pretty pleased with that. The main things I was looking to keep out of this car were the front bucket seats, because I needed a set of bucket seats for my Custom S, and it had black seat belts in it, so I went ahead and took the seat belts out of the car. And later on, when I ended up selling the car, the new owner didn't want the motor or transmission, and so I was able to keep both of those, and was able to sell the motor later on. Headliner, it was coming apart. It was about to fall down on my head, so that's expected for a 50-year-old car. Looking at the body, the front fenders, passenger side here, in front of the wheel was solid. This one had a little bit of rust at behind the wheel near the door, and the door had a little bit of rust, but The bottom of the door was solid, so it wasn't going to be a terrible thing to have to fix it. Moving toward the back in front of the rear wheel, it was good and solid there. Now behind the wheel, had quite a bit of rust on this lower quarter panel, which would be an easy patch to fix. The inner wheel well might have had a little bit of rust that needed to be corrected as well. Underneath the car looked really solid. I mean, this thing, you could tell it came from California. Definitely everything was rock solid on the floors. I think I saw a couple small areas in the notoriously bad underneath the back seats that might have needed a couple little patch panels there. But as far as the front floors and the footwells in the back, it was rock solid. Right there is the area underneath the back seat. Looks like it has a little bit of rust there, so I would imagine if I'd pulled the back seat out, I would see some areas there that needed some attention. But I wasn't planning on keeping the car since I already had a Custom S. It's kind of funny, I call this one the twin to the car that I do own, because they're so much alike. And if only I had not bought the other one first, I could have saved myself a lot of money. Bumper even looks good, nice and straight, missing the T for Pontiac. The gas tank had a leak in it, or something was going on there, so you know, not surprising that the gas tank might have had a rust hole in it. Underneath the back behind the wheels, really solid. Area underneath the seat on the driver's side and the back seat looked pretty solid on this side. Floors were rock solid. Frame was all really rock solid. Really couldn't get over how clean this car was on the bottom side. Under the door, a little crispy here and there, but nothing really that bad. More floors looking really solid and dry. Really crawled around into this thing and got a really close-up look of all the different parts of it. And it just really turned out to be a really, really good buy. $500 for a complete car with a motor and transmission and everything basically in place, not torn apart, not destroyed. Turned out to be an excellent buy. Driver's side front fender had a little bit of rust, and the door had a little bit of rust too. You can see a little bit of Bondo work there. But the back window, there was some pretty good sized hole in the driver's side there that I taped over just to keep the water out of it. And probably the passenger side too had a little bit of work done there. But the thing sat good, looked good, and everything was in good solid shape. It really would have been a great project car for me to move forward with if I hadn't already bought a Custom S a few months prior to this. Really had a pretty nice stance even without a motor in the front of it. The front grille and bumper and all of the valance, everything was perfectly straight on this car. Doesn't look like it ever had a wreck in the front. This is the Custom S that I had bought prior and did quite a bit of work to it. This is my project car, so it did come from California also. I had it brought here to Texas. Redid all of the suspension underneath it and brakes. Put a 12-bolt rear end in it. Done quite a bit of work along the lines on that. Next I'll be doing the interior work on it. This is what it looked like when I picked it up in California. Still had the stock hubcaps on it, and a few little scrapes here and there in the paint, but nothing too major. Overall, a good solid car, and very clean underneath with very minimal rust, just like the other Custom S that I bought for $500. So they're pretty equivalent, other than the one that I had bought previously did have a running motor and transmission and everything in it. When I bought it in LA, I was able to drive it 400 miles to a place to store it, and then have it trailered here to Texas. So So the one I had bought had a little bit more going for it, but this car here is quite exceptional. The trunk was even solid, a little bit of surface rust in there, but nothing major at all. Really surprising, since I had some holes in the rear window that the trunk hadn't suffered because of that. Of course, the rear quarters, I guess they're taking most of the brunt of that. And it does have the Custom S VIN number. And here's the motor. Basically, at this point, I was putting on a pallet to ship to the United Kingdom for a guy that needed an original 69 block for his 69 Firebird convertible. So that worked out really cool. The engine went to the UK. It took about 3.5 months to get there, but gave him a solid foundation to build from, and so that he could return his Firebird back to original stock 350. And it was an original bore block, so it hadn't had any work done to it, and really no ridge to say, so it was a real good candidate for a rebuild. Transmission has the VIN number stamped on it as well, the matching VIN, and it had the correct tag on the side of the transmission. The exhaust manifolds and the heads all matched the block as well, so it was all numbers matching. Intake as well. So really was super satisfied with that transaction of being able to buy this car for $500. And thank goodness I was able to contact the seller right away and get there within just a few days to pick it up, and beat out several people that were looking to buy the car. And it's no wonder. I mean, it is a fantastic buy for $500. I did get like I said, the seats and seat belts out of it, and the transmission and motor I kept because the new buyer didn't want them. He was going to put an LS motor in it, so it worked out good for me. I was able to sell the motor, and I have the bucket seats to put in my Custom S, and so it's a win-win. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. This time, I was a winner. Thanks for watching.